Hello, keep singing members. Here, let me turn on my video. There I am. I am in a practice room and I'm very sorry I was late because my battery died for my phone, which was my internet connection because the Wi-Fi connection wasn't working. And and then Zoom wouldn't launch. It's that love-hate relationship with the beautiful, beautiful, beautiful technology. So let's jump in, that is. It is March. First of all, I want to tell you all thank you so very much for the outpouring of love and prayers and thoughtfulness you all sent me last week when my mom was very sick in an emergency situation. She did die on Tuesday, a week ago today. And I miss her dearly, but she was a huge fighter, strong will to live, 95 years old, lived a very long and full life, but the last few years have been difficult. I'm sure a lot of you could tell similar stories with your loved ones. Yeah, we had a beautiful, beautiful time together. I really could not have asked for a more beautiful and filling and fulfilling time with her and my brother before she passed away and as she passed away. So I would call it the blessing of being with several people as they've passed away. Hope that's nothing to do with me. My father's passing was very traumatic. It was a medical malpractice situation and a mistake that was made, and it was very, very traumatic and very sudden and unexpected. So everything about that was the opposite, the experience this time. It was as peaceful and beautiful as it could be. We sang a ton, like 3 days straight before mom passed, sang her hymns, songs, spiritual songs, prayed, told stories, laughed, and mom was on a ventilator most of the time, so she couldn't participate too much. But I'll share this. Her last words to my brother and me were, and these were the only words I heard her say for the last 3 days, I love you both. So again, thank you. We will have her memorial service in Houston over Easter weekend. So I am looking forward to that in that way, that you kind of do, kind of don't. So I am going now to really jump in. We have been talking about breath support. Today, I'm going to talk about something called Appoggio. We'll let that run its course. Hopefully it's going to work. So Appoggio is this, it means in Italian, it means to lean. And that's, I mean, I kind of get where they're going with that. It's a little bit of a confusing term. What it's referring to is this push-pull of the rib cage expansion to give you the most effective breath support that you can do. We have talked over the last month, so February was breath support month, and we talked about, let me get this so I can see it. We talked about our rib cage, our respiratory anatomy, and we talked about the breathing exercises to build our capability of expansion and sustaining that expansion. Appoggio is that when you have that expansion and you are phonating, meaning making making music with your mouth and your body, and you are phonating and creating sound, and the appoggio is the leaning into the breath. It's kind of, it's so, it's not esoteric, but it's abstract. It is, let me put in my own words, forget appoggio for just a minute. It is sustaining in such a way as to maintain a balance between this expansion and this inhale and the exhale. Because remember, expansion creates inhale. If you go back, watch the last month's videos, do the last month's exercises, you are getting the idea of how, well, exercise 1 was about getting that idea that when you expand, it creates an inhale. When you unexpand or deflate, we send the air out. So it is, hey, do you have a lesson in here?
Yes.
What time?
Now.
Oh, okay. Well, hold on a minute.
Yeah,
Is
I
it
usually take the 7th graders.
Mm, 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 mm. Okay. So no, we're gonna just pause. Just pause. So the appoggio is that, again, in my own words, got to remember, put it in my own words, it's that balance between the pressing in and the expansion. The, the natural inclination is to squeeze the air, but appoggio is that leaning against that so that you have an expansion the whole time that you are singing and phonating. So that's why we learn, like, everybody who's credible who teaches voice is going to teach you some type of breath technique and some type of approach to having excellent breath support and supporting the larynx, giving it the maximum level of relaxation so that it can function optimally. Okay. And even those who say, don't worry about your breathing, read closer, read between the lines, because even those I have learned that say, don't worry about your breathing. Yeah, you don't need to worry about it. But then they go on and they teach, okay, you need to expand this way and this, that, and the other. So what I am teaching you is, and what we covered in February, is breaking down the process for understanding inflow and outflow, and then understanding how to do that expansion, creating that expansion, supporting that expansion, and then adding phonation to that expansion so that the diaphragm is able to send up just the right amount of air every time, freeing up the larynx to do its work without having to clamp down extra and work extra hard to be able to produce the sounds you are asking it to produce. If it's clamping down, that means you are trying to push too much air. Okay, so that is what appoggio is. It's that keeping the sustain of the rib cage going so that the diaphragm can regulate the breath, so that the air is not going to, the rate of airflow does not overcome the strength of the larynx, and that so that the larynx doesn't have to clamp down and overwork to do its job. So I know I'm saying this in a bunch of different ways. I'm trying to say it so that everybody will get it one way or another. But that is Appoggio. Okay, so let's get rid of Appoggio there. Bye-bye. So we have learned exercise 1. Breathe in, breathe out. Okay, that's like, this is the super compressed version. This is not how you do exercises 1, 2, and 3. I'm just giving you the picture of them. And so that when you go back and you learn them from last month's recordings, you'll be, oh, okay. Or if you did last month's recordings, you will recognize what I'm talking about. So we had the exercise 1, okay, and we had exercise 2, which started out as exercise 1, but started to build the muscles that help you expand the rib cage, and we're building those muscles, and then we are learning to isolate the diaphragm. We take our 3 little breaths. Okay, that's like super fast. Okay, then we lower everything. Okay, so now again, that map is not drawn to scale. Okay, go back and watch the videos where I spell it all out, walk you through it, teach it step by step. Then the third one is that I taught in a separate video, is what I call 8s, and you expand without all the gyrations of the arms and the wings and everything. You expand because by that point, because it has likely been anywhere between a couple weeks and a couple months. Some people, it takes weeks to get to exercise 3. Most people, it takes a few months. Some people, it takes several months to get to exercise number 3. It depends on your starting point and your general awareness of your expansion, your ability to expand. Some people, particularly swimmers, are more accustomed to focusing on their breath and expanding. So even if you do yoga and stuff like that, and you do meditative breathing or whatever, like that's not quite the same, although you're going to be probably more aware than other people are who don't do meditative breathing and don't do things for mindful breathing, I guess is the better term. So again, exercise 3, to finish what I started to say about that, expand and then sustaining the count of 8 on pitch and stretching it out in such a way as to attempt to utilize the breath fully until you are done with the breath without gasping and falling over because you're gasping out your last breath. So, okay, that is Appoggio. So if you hear me refer to the term Appoggio, that's what I'm talking about. But I don't talk about it all that much. I mainly talk about breath support, because that's really what it is. Now, let's talk today a little bit about how we create sound. I do want to, let me revisit those exercises. At first, exercise number 1, 30 a day. Then after you are getting it, you're understanding what you're doing, you're feeling what is happening, and you get it. You not only do it correctly, but you get it. You mentally understand, you feel it in your body, you get it with your mind. Then you start transitioning to exercise 2, and you might start with 20 breathing exercise 1s a day, and then 10 of number 2. Number 2 takes about 3 times as long as number 1. Number 1 takes about 15 seconds each, so it doesn't take much time at all. Number 2 is about 45 seconds each. So you're just going to kind of keep shifting the ratios as you gain strength and gain knowledge and and awareness and understanding and gain skill. Just keep shifting the ratios, and then you eventually are going to transition yourself to doing 30 a day of breathing exercise number 2, and you drop breathing exercise number 1 until you kind of have to redo everything. Maybe after an extended illness or whatever, you might start with number 1 for a day or 2, but it doesn't take long for your muscle memory to kick in. Once you're at number 2, you're gonna do that for several months because it should feel taxing. You should feel taxed. You should feel a little bit spent when you finish that. You should feel like your rib cage muscles and your latissimus dorsi, some of those back muscles are a little fatigued at the end of it. You're gonna break up your 30 into 3 sets of 10. And you're gonna give yourself a little rest in between each of those 10. So whether that is anywhere between 30 seconds and 2 minutes, okay? Or if you need to break up the 10, 10, 10, and 10 into different parts of your day, that is also fine. Part of the benefit of doing 10, rest, 10, rest, 10, rest, kind of all in a row, is fatigue, muscle fatigue. It's the same principle of if you're trying to build muscle in the gym, and you do a set of reps with a certain established amount of weight so that you fatigue your muscles. If you're not trying to bulk, then you're going to do it a certain way. We're not trying to bulk, but we are trying to do a little bit of fatigue. And then we rest, then we fatigue, then we rest, then we fatigue. Okay. So yeah, it works the same way because the larynx is full of these little muscles. They're just little tiny and cute. Okay. Now, then once you are doing that for a couple of months or perhaps weeks, again, depending on where you started with this, then you're going to transition yourself to number 3. And you'll do it the same way. Just keep changing the ratios. Maybe you're 20 of exercise 2, and then 10 of exercise 3, and then 10 and 20, and then all the way to 30. And the same principle of 10, 10, and 10 with a rest in between. Okay. Let's see. Where did I want to take you today? So we've reviewed those things. Let's talk about the larynx. What is happening there? I'm going to give you the super simplified version. What is happening when we make sound? Because you need to understand why it's important that your diaphragm be supported so well. I mean, I know you're like, of course, I have to sing with my diaphragm and super important. But I'm going to explain to you what it is that's happening so that you understand how those muscles can easily get overtaxed in your larynx and overused and kind of maybe even become damaged, like your vocal cords can get damaged. Or you just can tire your larynx out by overworking it. So, all right, here's your trachea. Here's your trachea. This kind of looks trachea-esque, little teeny bit. And the larynx sits on top of it. So you have this tube coming up from your lungs. So you have your lungs in here, and then the bronchi come this way, and bronchial tubes come this way, and then it comes to your trachea. That's your airway. Your esophagus is your swallowing tube that takes things from your mouth to your stomach. The trachea is the air passage. So I have talked with you about how the larynx has the function of not only of making vocal sound, but also of closing off the trachea whenever you swallow so that the food will go down the esophagus and not into your air passages. You do not want that. You do not want that. That's why if you do get a little something down there, you cough like crazy because your body is protecting you. So thank your body. That's how it's designed. Okay, so when your larynx is at rest, I'm having a deja vu. I feel like I did this. Like when you last week sent my brain for a loop, y'all. I know y'all will understand. So if I'm repeating myself, please apologize. I don't have my grid with me today to be able to know exactly what I'm supposed to cover today. So honestly, this could be review. Okay, maybe it'll benefit. All right, hopefully it will. So our Our larynx is sitting on top of the trachea. All right, so we have the, I think it's this way. So we have the Adam's apple at the front. That is your trachea, your larynx back there. So put your finger on your Adam's apple. Guys are more prominent than girls, but find it. You can kind of gently rub like this and say something, sing happy birthday or say, hey, my name is Natalie Eastman, until you feel that really, the really intense vibration. That's your larynx back there. Here's your trachea right here. The larynx is sitting right on top of that. And larynx, trachea. So, and the vocal folds are inside the trachea. And usually, if you're not making sound, phonating, they're just at rest and apart. All right, now, here they are. They're at rest and apart. Now, brain says, time to make some noise. So the larynx, remember this is this way. The larynx pulls the vocal folds, stretches them, and pulls the vocal folds closed. So now you have this closed off air passage. There is no air getting through there. And yet the diaphragm starts to send up a little air, starts to press on the lungs. And the lungs then, remember from exercise number 1, when the lungs get mushed, highly technical term, the air starts coming out, the air gets pressed out. But now we have the situation where it's closed off, it's not going to go anywhere. So I'm going to show you this cross-section view. The air is coming up against this closed off place, builds up in pressure, and then at just the right pressure point, it's miraculous, it's amazing. At just the right pressure, it bursts through and comes through, and then we have this compressed air coming up through the vocal folds, which have just kind of separated, okay? And then you have this compressed pocket of air. This is your first sound wave, but this happens over and over and over again. The air builds up in pressure, the diaphragm sitting air builds up in pressure and bursts through, and it keeps doing that over and over again. But here's the kind of cool thing. The whole thing that's happening in your vocal folds and the inside of the larynx is about that big. Like it's not big. It's dime nickel size-ish, depending on the larynx. So this is happening super fast, super tiny, and just all right there. And the frequency at which it's doing this is going to determine the pitch of the sound. So, and frequency meaning the rate of closures or openings and closures per minute, whatever defined period of time. That's the rate, that's the frequency. So that determines the pitch. The faster this is happening, the higher the pitch will be. The slower this is happening, the lower the pitch will be. In addition to the frequency of the opening and closing is also the length and the thickness of the edges of the vocal cords. So remember we've said like the vocal folds are kind of like these curtain-y kinds of things. The larynx closes those vocal folds over the trachea. But the edges of those vocal folds are what we call the vocal cords. And so you could kind of imagine, here's the vocal folds and these two fingers being the vocal cords, right? So the longer they go, the higher the pitch will be. the thinner they are, the higher the pitch will be. So you have these three factors that determine the pitch. It's the rate of opening and closing, the length of the vocal cords, and the thickness of the vocal cords. So the faster, thinner, and longer they are, the higher the pitch. The slower the opening, shorter, and what's the third one? Thicker they are, the lower the pitch will be. So, and the vocal cord thickness, just like how they grow, the unchangeable kind of factor is just according to your genetics. Some people have naturally thicker vocal folds, thicker vocal cords, and some people have thinner. Some people have longer. The naturally longer they are, the lower they're going to go. So I know that sounds like I'm saying the opposite thing, but the naturally longer they are, like at rest, people have different size larynxes. Okay, so like that's why guys, especially men, whether they are skinny men or beefy men, if they have a prominent Adam's apple, they generally have a pretty low voice, and that's showing you that their larynx is pretty big. So that long length, in its natural state, is going to indicate a lower voice. If you want a visual of this, think of a harp. Okay, the harp has the long, thick strings at one end. Those are the lowest notes. At the other end, you have these teeny little strings, metal strings, and they're thinner and shorter. Okay, so you can use a harp as visualization for like your vocal folds, vocal cords. But that's just to give you a little sense of what's happening there and how high and low pitch, high and low voices are produced. And the other aspect of that I want to say, we're not going to get into registers yet. We're going to get into that soon though, because now that we're into vocal production, you need to know about registers. I'm going to be adding to this, and let me just share with you. I want to share with you these views of the larynx so you can get an idea of what's going on. Hopefully you can see my big old cursor. And so these are the vocal folds, right? And these don't worry about this, what this says right now about false vocal cords and all that stuff. That's just, don't worry about it right now. We might touch on it. It's kind of need to know, it's not truly important for what you're doing. All right, we got our the inlet. This is where it goes, air goes into the larynx. There, and here's the trachea down here. All right, and we have cartilage down there. There are your vocal folds. The ends of these are what we are calling the vocal cords, okay? Here is the top view. All right, here's the tongue at this top. And if you remember me saying this, like this is what we're doing, the opening goes away from the front, and the front of it is kind of like this knuckle. That's kind of your Adam's apple, and it lays across the top of the trachea. So this is when you are inhaling, and your vocal folds are separated and relaxed and apart. This over here on the right is when the vocal folds are together and you are in the process of phonating. Those vocal folds back over here, ooh, those vocal folds are doing this. It's really pretty amazing. And when you see this from the top and you use a stroboscope to see it, you can see this, not just this kind of thing happening, but also there's a little bit of this too. I mean, it's pretty fascinating, but I'm a little geeky about that kind of thing. So that's what's happening. Now, back to explaining why we don't want to overblow. It might be more apparent now. The things that control all these functions going on here, they're teeny tiny, these little muscles. You've got the cartilage, but everything below the cartilage is all muscle. There's a lot of muscle that's going on here. There's tendons, muscles, and they are causing the folds to come together. They're causing them to go apart. They're causing the oscillation. So you have cartilage, you have the vocal fold edges, and you have cartilage, and then you have muscle wall. So, and then, of course, around there too, there's just long story short, there's muscles that are making this stuff happen. So if you are pushing more air than this tiny gizmo needs, its muscles are going to have to clamp down to to be able to maintain the desired frequency and pitch, yeah, and lengthen everything of the positioning of the vocal folds and the larynx in general. It's going to have to fight and struggle to do what your brain has asked it to do if you are pushing too much air. And if you continue to push too much air, your neck muscles are going to clamp and they're going to try to come help. And you just don't want that. That's why we are learning this whole breath support system, this process step by step, where you can support this little tiny gizmo in doing its job effectively and without having to clamp and get too tired. And then ultimately, if we do it way too much, do too much of that, then we can damage it. So we don't want to do that. We want it to be able to do its job easily and fluidly. And yes, the main term there is with ease, with ease. So you want to have that sense of ease when you sing. It doesn't mean that you always sing like this. Like, that's not what I'm talking about. But I can sing. And never feel 1 second of strain or pushing, forcing, or any grabbing. And that is what we're looking for. Even when I'm doing a forte note, I don't feel forcing, grabbing, or pushing. So that is training and breath support, and that's what I want for you. So please send me, I know technically today is supposed to be a Q&A day, but because I missed last week, or was last week Q&A, I don't know, March, just forget it. With my mom getting sick and going into the hospital, just on its head, everything's on its head. But please do not hesitate to send me questions. Next week, I am going to be doing this recording. Is going to be a little challenging. I might be recording it and meeting with you all as I'm driving to the airport, or we might move it to the day before. We might move it to Monday. So in fact, and I will send out notices about that if that's what I decide to do, but it probably will be, because I'm going to Texas next Tuesday for my mom's memorial service and celebration of life. So that's that. Okay, please send me any questions at Q&A, all spelled out, QANDA at keep-singing.com. Take care.